Hi, church. It's Pastors Jen and Jacob with a very special digital devotion today. I've been hearing this word that I really love. It's called your quarantine, and it's the people who you quarantine with. And that might look different for us. Maybe we are quarantining with a partner or spouse or pets. Maybe we have extended family or roommates, or maybe we are quarantining alone. Those dynamics look a little bit different for each of us. And we're going to touch on all of those topics today because we are thrilled to have with us licensed marriage and family therapist Helen Glaze, who works in Claremont, and she can tell us the name of where she works. We would love to hear that. And we have a few questions for her today. So Helen, welcome.
Thank you, Jen and Jacob. Nice to see you both.
You too.
Remind us where you work here in Claremont.
So when I'm not working from home doing telehealth, I'm working at Claremont Counseling and Support Center, which is just in the village there on First Street.
Wonderful. We are so glad to have you with us. And to begin, let's just talk about one relationship. And again, we'll try to touch on all of these, which is if we are quarantining with a lovely spouse, a few things. How do we maintain romance in a quarantine when we're together so often all day with this person? How do we make sure we don't get on each other's nerves? What do we do if we are on each other's nerves and settle that conflict? Can you help us think about what it's like to quarantine with a partner or a spouse?
Well, absolutely. I think there's a few things, and I probably am going to sound a little bit like a broken record because I'm going to keep talking about this term of self-care. So one of the things I sent you that you can share with the congregation is a self-care toolkit. And that's a little document that we use a lot with our clients, and I use it myself, to help me think through what do I need on any given day to feel like myself. And that is so many different things. It's things that I do by myself. It's things that I do for myself. It's things that I do with others. And so there's a lot of different categories in there that can help you think through what do I need so that I'm in a good space to be in a relationship with anyone at all, whether it's my dog or my partner or a kid. So the first thing is get in touch with what helps you. And once you've done that, then think about how can I involve my partner in that, right? So the romance question, that is a tough one, right? We're together all day long, maybe. So how do we get that feeling of romance? So one of the things that I like to recommend to folks is to have some kind of rhythm to your day. Have some kind of schedule. It doesn't have to be a rigid schedule. It might be in the morning, we're off by ourselves doing our own thing, so that when we come together, maybe in the afternoon, we have something to share, that we haven't been under each other's feet all day. So that's one way, is to just have some kind of shared agreement about what the day is going to look like, which makes it a little easier to get romantic when it's time. And that might mean having a date night every week. So that could have, on Friday nights, we agree that we're gonna have date night. Maybe we'll get takeout, maybe we'll make a beautiful dinner, we'll sit outside, maybe we'll turn some music on. But you need to put that thought and that effort into it in order to get those moments and make them happen.
I love that idea.
That's great, yeah. And we've already descended into chaos in quarantine. How do we get out of that?
That's a great question. It's never too late. There was a great article in the New York Times that said something like, how do I rescue myself from a horrible quarantine day? And the long and the short of that article was, don't rely on how you feel, because if you descended into chaos, you might feel like doing nothing. Take a look at that self-care toolkit that you've filled out so diligently and say, I know that when I do this, this, and this, I feel better, or we feel better as a couple. So even though we don't feel like doing that right now, let's try. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. You know what works for you. I know what works for me. I just have to make myself sort of do it sometimes.
That's good.
Yeah.
So would you give the same advice for people who are quarantining with a bigger group of people, like extended family, grandparents, other relatives? What does that look like?
Yes, I would. Certainly those relationships look different. There's probably different comfort levels in terms of what you're comfortable sharing and how honest you want to be, you know, especially if there's in-laws and maybe some sensitivities there. But one thing that I have been recommending to folks is to take that toolkit and to even sit down over dinner, give people a chance to fill it out themselves on their own time, and then coming together. And discussing it. There's a category there that says support from others. How can I utilize support from others to help support my self-care? And that's a great conversation topic. And it might just be, hey, I need some time to myself, you know, every morning. It's communicating those needs with the other people in your household are important. And the more people there are in a household, the more complicated and difficult it can be to do that. So having a structured way of having that conversation, I think, could be very helpful.
Wow, that does sound really helpful and a great way to think about setting boundaries with people, to have that conversation and to be able to express what you need.
Yes.
Is there different dynamics with that if it were, say, roommates? And, you know, roommates might have different schedules or might be they might be essential workers who are out of the house, and you're trying to talk about how best to protect the whole roommate unit. How do you set those boundaries with roommates?
I think that's a really great question. And I think something that we're going to be seeing even more of is that as California moves into sort of stage 2 of the quarantine or of the safer at home orders, people are going to have different comfort levels with their own exposure. And I think with roommates, that can get especially complicated as those relationships are just different, right? Oftentimes they're not as intimate. The sense of need to accommodate the other person's desires might be a little looser. And yet the effect of people's well-being and feeling of safety in their own home is the same. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more difficult conversations between folks who have different levels of comfort with going out when something isn't needed. Certainly those who are essential workers are serving us and need to go out and need to do those things. So that conversation sort of is so important to have. So I think for everyone who is living in a house with anyone else, as the guidelines change, we all need to sit down and have an intentional conversation about what I need to do to feel safe. How can I, how much communication do you need from me so that you're aware of what I'm doing and not doing? Those conversations are going to be really important.
Mm-hmm. That's really great. Okay, what advice would you give for someone who is quarantining alone?
So quarantine alone. Well, one of the things that's been on my mind about that, and not just actually for people in quarantine alone, but those who are quarantining with others, but I'll talk about it in this context, is whatever we were dealing with before the quarantine often is magnified during the quarantine. So in ways that we felt good about ourselves, about our life situation, we might be really grateful for those things now. Where we have struggled, if we struggle with anxiety or depression and loneliness, those things are going to be really magnified now. So it's so important to find your support network if you're quarantining alone, and to be real clear with those folks who are in that support network that now's a time when you really may need support. And is that okay if I reach out? If I'm feeling sad, scared, alone, can I call you? What time is too late for those phone calls? And really ask for that honesty from them. If you're not finding that you have a good support network, reaching out to therapists, pastors, to say, hey, I need some help with my support network. That it's very important so that you can keep yourself not just physically safe, but emotionally safe as well.
Oh, that's great.
That's
really
incredible.
helpful.
And so anyone watching, we want you to know exactly what Helen said, that if you need a support network, you can always reach out to us. And Helen is an incredible professional resource who has been a wonderful friend of the church. So anything you need, reach out. We all have different circumstances right now. It's a challenge. These dynamics are shifting. And so we hope that you can create healthy relationships, whether those are your physically close relationships or the digital relationships that we're forming right now. So thank you for these tools, and I hope that we can all utilize this self-care assessment and be open to talking with people about what our needs are. Thank you for your time, Helen.
Yeah, thanks, Helen.
It was so fun to see you.
You too.
Yeah.
Stay well.
Thank you. You too.